My name's David Chandler and my background is the construction industry for nearly 50 years. I've only recently joined the public sector to take on the role of the New South Wales Building Commissioner. Well, it's a most unusual role, the role of Building Commissioner in New South Wales, because it's a combination of advocacy and leadership at the same time as standing up new legislation, but also being responsible for leading a transformation of a public agency to be modernised and to change the way that it's operated in the past. So the thing that I'm most excited about is just how we've been able to bring both the regulator and the industry along on a journey where everybody can see what the end is starting to look like. I think innovations, first of all, got to have a very clear identification of what the problem is. Many people see problems, though, from their own perspective, through their own lens. They don't necessarily see it through the lens of all of the other people who are stakeholders in understanding the problem and then what the solution might look like. So quite often I see people who've got this fantastic idea for a widget or a piece of software and they think that it's going to be game-changing, but they actually lack context. And so if it doesn't have context, then it's not going to happen. So I think innovation's got to really be quite clear about what's the problem that's going to be solved. Are there any other people that are really very close to solving that problem that you entering is not going to make much difference? But if you decide to enter, then what's the measurable difference that you think you're going to make? When you get to the end and you start to look back on innovation that you've been involved in, you've got to be careful you don't think that it was so great that it is actually the end game. But so innovations are incremental, they're part of a journey. So for the Office of Building Commissioner, one of the really interesting pieces of work we've done is to work with the private sector to actually get the private sector to build capability that could be universally used in a way that takes some of the public expectation off the regulator for doing things and start to realise that there are other alternatives that are equally credible and probably more impactful. One of the challenges I find with people in government, in fact, it's the same problem in private sector, so it's not exclusively the domain of government, is that people lack the ability to describe what's the problem, what's the solution look like, and then how to achieve it. So quite often people have just simply got this view of a piece of innovation in their mind looks like this, but they lack the narrative. And the test I always apply to innovation, and this would be my message to anybody leading in innovation, was that if you are doing a pitch to a venture capitalist, they want to know what the way in is, what the stay in is, and what the way out is. So unless you've actually got clarity about those stages, then you really can't describe the value proposition that you have on your mind. Today's been a very instructive day for me because quite often we spend 10 hours a day, up to 6 days a week, immersed in our own little silo thinking about how we're going to solve our problem. What I think today's been really interesting is that the conversation allows you to think more outside the square. It gives you an opportunity to step away from your day-to-day experience and immerse yourself into the bigger picture and understand the contextual nature of your role. And so for my role, I think that today is just a nugget of gold in terms of that journey. There are many gatherings or conferences which really are a talk fest. Conferences can at times be more promotional of a vendor as opposed to just simply sharing knowledge that could benefit everybody. I think the big distinction about the way today's event has been conducted is it's about giving everybody the opportunity to absorb some knowledge or insights that they didn't have. There's not been a single vendor in there trying to beat up your mind saying buy this, buy that. It's been more about how can we stretch you and how can we get your thinking better aligned with a bigger picture. So I think this is one of the unique sorts of events that doesn't happen very often.